Imagine you worked all week. You show up at the dealership on a quiet Saturday. You already picked the car online. The sticker felt reasonable. The monthly number fit the space you'd already made for it. Then the paperwork stretched. 2 extra pages. A few new line items. The payment moved by about $20, so you signed. One small shift in the number you focus on changes thousands you never consciously calculate. On a 5-year loan, a $20 monthly increase adds $1,200 over 60 months. Extend the term by 12 months, and the extra principal adds roughly $384 if the monthly payment remains unchanged. A 0.5% APR bump contributes about $300 in additional interest over the same period. Add a $35 monthly accessory or protection plan, which totals $2,100 over 5 years. Layered together, the cumulative extraction quietly surpasses $3,500, all while the monthly number you mentally anchored to feels unchanged. Car dealerships operate on thin margins for the vehicle itself. Profit migrates away from the sticker into areas that compound quietly: financing term adjustments, APR increases, and bundled add-ons. Each channel is calculated to maximize cumulative profit while remaining below conscious attention thresholds. Manufacturer holdbacks create another invisible layer. On a $30,000 car, a $1,500 holdback or a quarterly bonus tied to sales targets can convert a low margin sale into $3,000, $4,000 in net profit. These levers are not visible to the buyer, but factor into the arithmetic that guides the deal. By the time you leave, the combined extraction from monthly adjustments, financing shifts, add-ons, and hidden incentives can exceed $6,000 over 5 years. The car feels like the price you expected, but the total cost quietly expands across multiple levers you never consciously tracked. I'm Faisal. I spend time noticing how systems guide attention instead of forcing decisions. If you've bought a car and later wondered why the numbers never quite added up, even though nothing felt wrong, this way of seeing clarifies the total cost. By the time you shake hands over a $30,000 vehicle, the math behind the sale is already working somewhere else. On a deal like this, the visible price often produces surprisingly little profit on its own. Sometimes a few $1,000s, sometimes only a few hundred once floor plan, interest, sales commissions, and overhead are accounted for. That thin front-end margin is intentional. It forces the real profit to migrate away from the sticker and into what happens after you agree to it. That's why the negotiation feels relaxed around price and suddenly precise around everything else: credit protection, paint sealant, extended warranties. Each line item might add $800, $1,200, or $2,000 on paper, yet the payment impact is often framed as $30 or $40 a month. Over a 5-year loan, a $40 increase alone totals $2,400. Add 2 such products, both financed, and you're already near $4,800 in additional out-of-pocket costs without ever revisiting the price you thought you negotiated. Margins on the car itself stay thin because they're backfilled elsewhere. Manufacturer incentives and holdbacks play a central role here. On a $30,000 vehicle, a 2-3% holdback means $600 to $900 is reimbursed to the dealer after the sale clears. Layer in volume bonuses, often $500 to $1,500 per unit once monthly or quarterly targets are hit, and a car that appeared to sell at cost quietly turns profitable. The discount you see and the profit they realize are not the same number. They live on different ledgers. The math escalates once financing is involved. A $1,200 protection package financed over 5 years at 6% doesn't just cost $1,200, it adds roughly $190 in interest by the end of the term. Add a second product at the same price and you're near $2,800 total for items that were presented as minor safeguards. Each product is small in isolation, Together, they rebuild the margin the sticker price couldn't provide. Timing strategies tighten the system further. Sales tied to end of month or end of quarter targets unlock bonuses that only apply if the deal is structured a certain way, often through dealer-arranged financing rather than outside credit. A single deal can be the difference between missing and hitting a threshold worth tens of thousands across the dealership. Your individual contract absorbs that pressure quietly through rate adjustments or bundled products that look optional but are financially strategic. Even psychology follows math. Once the price is settled, your attention relaxes. The negotiation moves to the back end where approvals feel incremental rather than decisive. A rational buyer who would scrutinize a $2,000 price increase can accept the same amount spread across paperwork and payments because each step feels small and reversible. For the buyer, the result is a structural mismatch. You win the visible negotiation and still lose on the total outcome. The car itself barely matters because it was never designed to carry the profit. The ripoff isn't loud or emotional. It's arithmetic distributed across time, incentives, and attention, converting a $30,000 sale into several $1,000s of extraction you were never invited to calculate. You sit at the desk while the salesperson asks, "What monthly payment feels comfortable?" A 1-point APR change can register as a few dollars a month while adding hundreds, sometimes thousands, over the life of the loan. The number sounds harmless, maybe $7 more per month, easy to wave away, but over 60 months, that single shift becomes $420, and that's before any additional fees or interest on add-ons are layered in. The cost grows quietly below the level where it feels worth stopping the process. The trap works through mental accounting. Price, trade-in value, interest rate, and loan term are discussed as separate conversations, as if they don't multiply each other. You agree to each piece in isolation, feeling methodical and in control. Yet the math stacks. A $30,000 price financed over 5 years with even a 1% APR increase can add $800, $1,000 in interest alone. Nothing is miscalculated. The structure just ensures you never view the full equation at once. Loan length is where the illusion deepens. Stretching a term from 48 months to 60 months might drop a payment from $550 to $470. An $80 monthly relief that feels meaningful, but those extra 12 months add $1,920 in principal you wouldn't have paid otherwise, plus additional interest across the entire balance. The deal feels easier to live with now, even as the total obligation expands well past what your earlier math implied. By the time financing is finalized, you've already anchored on the idea that you negotiated well. That perception wins dull scrutiny. A $35 monthly accessory charge or $25 for gap insurance barely registers against the approved payment. Over 5 years, those two line items alone reach $3,600, and that figure sits on top of the principal, not instead of it. Each addition feels optional. Together, they rebuild the margin that couldn't be extracted up front. Even smaller rate changes follow the same pattern. A 0.25% APR bump might raise the payment by only $3. Over 60 months, that's $180, and when combined with other minor adjustments, term extension, add-ons, fees, it easily pushes the cumulative cost past $1,000 without triggering resistance. Attention fatigue does the work. The system benefits from your instinct to prioritize immediate affordability over total exposure. What crystallizes by the end is this: the ripoff isn't a single fee or a dishonest rate. It's how focusing on the monthly number collapses time. Short-term comfort quietly converts into long-term extraction, one small adjustment at a time. Nothing feels aggressive, yet thousands leave your account because the structure trained you to stop calculating when the payment felt safe. By the time you reach the finance office, the deal already feels finished. I noticed a shift immediately. The salesperson relaxes, slides over a stack of contracts, and asks almost casually, "Would you like to protect your investment with our coverage options?" Dealers often earn as much or more from financing products per vehicle than from the car itself. That single fact reframes the entire sequence. The sticker price was never the primary profit center. The real margin arrives here line by line after your resistance has softened. The timing is intentional. After hours of discussion, negotiation, and recalculation, your cognitive bandwidth is depleted. Each question is framed as optional and prudent, not as a cost decision. Saying no requires justification. Saying yes simply moves the process forward. A $500 extended warranty, a $200 anti-theft package, a $300 paint or fabric protection plan. Individually, they feel minor. Together, they quietly total $1,000, $1,500, often exceeding the $1,000 price reduction you fought for earlier. What's rarely made explicit is how these products interact with financing. Those add-ons aren't paid once they're folded into the loan. Finance $1,500 over 60 months at 6% APR, and the real cost rises to roughly $1,740 to $1,800 by the time interest is paid. The add-ons don't just erase your negotiation win, they reverse it. The math changes, but your perception doesn't, because the monthly impact feels small, maybe $25 to $30 more per month. Each product is sold as loss prevention. The language consistently redirects attention toward hypothetical future pain. What if something breaks? Instead of present, guaranteed cost. By separating these decisions from the car itself, the system turns them into psychologically isolated choices. No single item feels large enough to trigger scrutiny. The structure relies on your instinct to avoid regret rather than your capacity to calculate totals under fatigue. The escalation is quiet but precise. One add-on feels negligible. 3 or 4 push total outflow past your original savings. A buyer who negotiated $1,500 off the sticker can easily walk out having committed $1,700 to $1,900 in financed extras. You remember the victory on price because it was emotional and effortful. You barely register the losses because they arrived incrementally, wrapped in reassurance. Sequencing turns attention into currency. Early conversations focus on price and trade-ins, areas where effort still exists and wins feel possible. Later, when energy is gone, you face layered options framed as protection, not spending. The system doesn't depend on deception, it depends on timing. Each small yes converts a visible win into an invisible loss across the total transaction. By the time you sign, the deal is no longer the one you think you made. A few $100s here, a modest monthly bump there, all rolled into financing, quietly compound into thousands. The extraction stays hidden because no single step feels consequential. Only afterward does the arithmetic surface, revealing that fatigue, not needed, decides which products you paid for. When your old car rolls onto the lot, familiarity immediately shapes the conversation. I can feel how memory takes over, the miles driven, the trips it survived, the quiet sense that it's still worth something. In reality, vehicles often lose 15-20% of their value per year, while trade-in negotiations rarely surface that math directly. Your anchor isn't depreciation curves or wholesale pricing formulas the dealer uses. It's the $20,000 you paid years ago when the car was new. That gap between emotional memory and market reality sets the stage for everything that follows. The system leans into that attachment. A trade-in offer can feel like a win even when it's structurally neutralized elsewhere. If a dealer offers $7,500 for a car that cost $20,000 3 years ago, the number may feel reasonable, even generous, relative to your expectations. But that perceived gain often coincides with subtle shifts. 0.751% APR increase, a longer loan term, or additional finance products. The trade-in win captures attention while the rest of the deal quietly absorbs it. Bundling intensifies the effect. Once the trade-in feels settled, buyers instinctively defend that victory. A $200 increase in monthly payment doesn't feel alarming when framed against a good trade-in. Yet $200 over 60 months is $12,000 before interest. Even smaller shifts matter. A $1,000 accessory rolled into financing at 6-7%. APR becomes $1,200 to $1,300 by payoff. The perceived gain on the trade-in evaporates not at signing, but slowly across the loan. What's happening isn't a failure of arithmetic, it's a narrative imbalance. The trade-in discussion is concrete, emotional, and immediate. The costs that offset it are abstract, delayed, and divided across categories. A buyer may believe they preserved $1,500 in value through negotiation, while unknowingly committing to $2,000 to $3,000 in higher interest, longer terms, or add-ons. From the dealer's side, the math balances cleanly. From the buyer's side, the loss stays hidden because it never appears as a single number. By the time the keys change hands, the financial outcome rarely matches the emotional story. Each choice, trade-in value, loan structure, monthly payment, was part of a sequence designed to conceal cumulative cost behind selective wins. The illusion persists because the emotional reference point dominates perception. In this architecture, feeling like you won on the trade-in does nothing to prevent the deal from costing thousands more than your mental estimate. Walking into a dealership feels routine because it is. I notice how familiar everything appears, the forms, the questions, the pauses that stretch just long enough to feel expected. That normalcy masks layers of cost embedded in each transaction. Buyers accept delays, haggling, and miscellaneous fees because culturally they're framed as unavoidable. The effect isn't dramatic in any single line items. It's embedded in expectation. When confusion is standard, clarity becomes optional, and behavior aligns without active resistance. Regulatory attention to so-called junk fees quietly confirms this structure. Documentation charges, processing fees, and dealer add-ons routinely range from $300 to $800, sometimes more, yet they're presented as procedural necessities rather than negotiable costs. Investigations and reports exist, but for the average buyer, nothing visibly changes. These aren't hidden loopholes, they're signals. When everyone expects fees to appear, scrutiny drops, and the system continues without friction. Social reinforcement compounds the effect. Once I hear the same stories repeated, someone paid a bit extra, another lost a couple thousand but got the car. No single experience is extreme enough to trigger rejection. A $1,200 surprise feels unfortunate, not alarming. Multiplied across millions of transactions, those small concessions become normalized extraction. Culture absorbs the loss, and repetition turns it into baseline behavior. For the buyer, the trade-off feels rational at the moment. Accepting the process reduces confrontation and speeds closure. The relief is immediate, the cost is delayed. A few overlooked fees, a slightly higher rate, an unchallenged add-on, each one small enough to ignore, combine into $2,000, $4,000 that was never consciously approved as a total. Compliance now preserves extraction later. The deeper pattern reframes blame. The financial ripoff persists not because one dealer is unusually aggressive, but because the architecture rewards opacity consistently. Each transaction reinforces expectations for the next. When the system feels normal, resistance feels abnormal, and value continues to move quietly, predictably in one direction. Sitting at the desk, the numbers finally line up in front of you. The monthly payment, the add-ons, the trade-in, the fees, they stop feeling separate and start forming a traceable sequence. A $470 payment over 60 months is no longer just $470. It's $28,200 before interest, before accessories, before documentation charges. When attention stays intact, the system has fewer places to hide the cost. Nothing about the policy changes, but the leverage quietly does. This clarity reframes perception. There are no hidden formulas here, no insider trick the dealer is protecting. The structure works because attention is split across time and categories. When price, financing, add-ons, and trade-ins are viewed together, the arithmetic becomes ordinary, and that ordinariness is disruptive. A $1,200 warranty financed over 5 years isn't protection. It's $20 extra per month plus interest layered invisibly onto a payment you were trained to watch in isolation. Temporal perspective adds another layer. Once the full flow of money is mapped, urgency loses authority. Separating decisions, price today, financing tomorrow, add-ons never, changes outcomes without confrontation. Even a single pause can collapse compounding. Declining or delaying one $25 monthly add-on preserves $1,500 over a standard term, not because of negotiation skill, but because time was allowed back into the equation. Optionality extends to perception itself. You may still accept a higher rate or an add-on, but the trade-off is now explicit. A 0.5% APR increase becomes $700 to $900 over the loan instead of a vague few dollars a month. Bundled products stop disappearing into paperwork. They remain visible as cumulative commitments. The system continues operating exactly as designed, but its psychological advantage weakens. The final shift is quiet. The rip-off persists because of attention fragments, not because dealers behave unusually. When each layer of cost stays visible, the balance changes. The structure doesn't need to collapse, it only needs to be seen. And once it is, exposure shrinks, not dramatically, but measurably. If this way of seeing feels clarifying, staying subscribed makes sense. No promises, no shortcuts, just a lens that keeps attention intact. In a system built on compression and fatigue, that alone alters the outcome.